Hi, I'm Vint Cerf. I'm the Chief Internet Evangelist and Vice President of Google. I also serve as Chairman of the Board of the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, and I have an appointment at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory as a visiting scientist. I'm here having this discussion in McLean, Virginia on the 14th of December, 2006. Part of the reason for this discussion is that I have a long history of association with the Internet and its early development, and I've continued to participate in various aspects of Internet design and use ever since the work began in 1973. I've been asked what it is that excites me about what I do, and I think part of what is so exciting about this project, and has been ever since the beginning, is that so many people have recognized the excitement and utility of creating infrastructure that virtually anyone can use if they've figured out a way to do it. In some ways, I think of this as being the design and construction of a virtual road system, where once the roads are in place, lots of people can design and build vehicles of various kinds, trucks, cars, and so on, or services that lie alongside the roads. And as long as everybody follows the rules of the road, it's possible to create all kinds of new applications and services, to create new businesses and new business models that allow a kind of online environment to evolve. So for me, anyway, the exciting part about Internet has been the enormous influx of interest from so many people. So actually the Internet's design was intended to be open and relatively neutral with regard to applications. It was important that people could try things out without having to get permission from anyone. When the World Wide Web was introduced, and even before that, email, which came along actually before the Internet, it came along in 1971, this notion of networked electronic mail, was a medium of discourse that permitted a vastly free-flowing set of ideas to be exchanged among groups of people. What we did notice very quickly is that this Internet environment was different from the traditional media. In particular, instead of just being a point-to-point medium like the telephone, or being a broadcast medium like radio and television, or print newspapers and magazines, it was a medium which supported group interaction. In the presence of the World Wide Web, it also permitted people to discover each other. Even if they didn't know who the parties were, they could communicate with each other through distribution lists or through chat rooms and things of that sort. And so this ability to discover common interests and the architecture of the net, which is independent of national boundaries, it's quite insensitive to that, created a social environment which is quite different from anything we've ever had in the past. I believe that many of the court cases here in the United States that have had to deal with content on the net have acknowledged, even up at the Supreme Court level, that the democratic ability to express oneself in this global medium is a dramatically important aspect of the network's function. It's fair to say that that other media have come near to those sorts of capabilities. Generally speaking, radio and television don't, because it's expensive to get into the radio and television business. You have to get a license and so on. So it's a prohibitively high barrier for ordinary mortals. On the other hand, getting things into print may be a little easier. If you have a printing press, you can crank out tracts and so on. Getting things into distributed in book form is not so simple, and it does require a fair amount of infrastructure. Similarly with movies. Internet comes along, and it reduces the economic barrier to almost nothing to express oneself in a variety of different media. And so we see blogging, we see video blogging, we see things like YouTube and Google Video and some of the other services that allow people, using the same tools that the professional production people are using now, to produce their own content. And so suddenly, those who were consumers only of content have now become producers of content. And this is really quite transforming, because that content is accessible to virtually everyone. 1 billion people on the network now, maybe 3 billion by the end of 2010, half the world's population in rough terms. We've never had anything like that. And interestingly enough, the wireless world is contributing to this. When we started out with wireless telephony 20, 25 years ago, the basic functionality was simply voice communication. But those handheld devices today are not just telephones. They're programmable devices. When they ingest new software, they add functionality. And if you get one which knows how to interpret Java code, for example, you can ingest a piece of software through the web, in effect, and make your mobile do something that it never did before. So I'm seeing the mobile world, which has blasted through some of the barriers to availability of communication. I think the estimates are that something like 2.5 billion mobiles may be in use now, bringing communication and internet access and short message applications and so on to an enormously larger fraction of the world's population than ever before. These things are coming together in a kind of amalgam of communication facilities. And that's really exciting, because suddenly we're seeing almost an inflection point in the ability to communicate freely. Plainly, there are some parts of the world that care a great deal about the fact that their citizens have access to information and have the ability to express themselves openly, and don't like that. And so there are regimes around the world that are concerned about the ability of citizens to get information. Oddly enough, even our own government in the United States had some concerns sufficient to cause them to try to pass the Communications Decency Act twice. And they failed because the legislation was overly broad. And my recollection of the Supreme Court rendering in that particular case said that this medium should not be confined to communication by young people, that the communication on the internet should not be synonymous with communication in the sandbox, but rather it should be open. Now, plainly, there are issues associated with abuse of the internet's resources, and that's why we have law enforcement systems to worry about. But nonetheless, I think this is one of the most powerful instruments for freedom of speech and democratic participation that has been available to our global population.